Okay. So today we're talking traction road mapping. I'm curious what you know about traction road mapping, if anything at all.
I know nothing about it beyond what you have already introduced me to.
Okay, well then, it'll be a fun little discussion. Let me
Yes.
minimize. So yes, the traction roadmap is essentially, how to model the output of a business model. And it serves two purposes, I'll say up front. One, it's a quick way to sanity check. Is this thing that I'm thinking of worth building? And number two, it helps you set goals based on a certain 10x mindset. How much do you need to focus on right now? You're not trying to get 1 million people, you're trying to get X number of people. And so those are the kind of two ways that it's used. And today, I think it'll be about an hour, and we'll have mini activities throughout it. So expect that we'll stop occasionally and just kind of talk. And if you need to pause, of course, you let me know. So last time we talked a little bit about kind of the old world of business model design, and it was all about output, creating, building. And with lean, we're all about outcomes. Those top two mindsets we talked about last time, like love the problem, not the solution, and the business model is the product, right? So you got to think about the whole business model, not just the solution. Today, it's all about traction is the goal. So traction is the word of the day. And the idea is if you don't know where you're going, any road's going to get you there. And so having some idea of a goal is necessary when you're starting out. This is just an example business model. Don't pay too much attention to really what it says. Just focus on this question at the bottom there. Is this thing worth pursuing? That's really the ultimate question you have to ask after you're done modeling it out. Oh, I got Kathy coming in, so give me 1 second. Let me admit, I have to exit out whenever I admit somebody new. We'll say hi to Kathy and then move on. Hey, Kathy. Howdy, Kathy.
Hello.
Hello. We're starting off, so you're jumping in a couple minutes late, but I'm glad that you're here. So to just because you got in here, I'll just say we're talking about the traction roadmap right now, and we're essentially trying to answer the question at the bottom of the screen here. Last time we talked about the lean canvas, the business model itself, how to communicate your idea. This time, today, the traction roadmap, we're talking, is it worth pursuing? Is this business model worth pursuing? And so you often see the graphs of the successful companies, right? The big hockey sticks. And you have to ask, well, what do we start measuring? How do we even begin this? And the answer is you need to think about traction. And to start thinking about traction, it's worth asking ourselves, what is it? What is traction? Well, there's 3 different ways of thinking about it. Here's 3 different definitions, or at least ways of features of it. It's a measure of a working business model. It's also a measure of how customers engage with your business model. And finally, it's a leading indicator. Who here has talked about leading versus lagging indicators? Fair enough. Leading indicators, they lead to revenue. A revenue is a lagging indicator. It's the result of traction. So traction are the activities, the user activities that occur that lead to revenue, okay? A lot of people, you'll sometimes see graphs that go up and to the right or just linear graphs from startups saying, look at all the people that like my Facebook page, or look at all the users that sign up on my website. And a lot of investors, stakeholders, and just executives look at it and say, well, how do these things lead to revenue, right? And so that's the question is you need to figure out, well, what is the metric that matters for my business model early on that I can point to and say, this is leading to revenue clearly. You can see that profit is the lowest line. It's negative always until you start making enough revenue to offset costs. Revenue at the beginning is nothing. Traction is what you can actually create without actually needing to create revenue. So let's just talk about building a traction roadmap versus a product roadmap. People fall in love with product roadmaps. As soon as you start putting features in a spreadsheet, in a list, and put the word roadmap on it, people assume that we're talking about some sort of obligation, right? We're going to do this thing. And we need to think about, and that's the mindset of output, right? And we're trying to think of outcome. And so a traction roadmap is all about outcome. You can see it's very simple. This is it. There's nothing more to it. This is it. Well, we use it in different ways, but this is a traction roadmap. You can see it has a minimum success criteria, $10 million in 3 years. And then it has just growth stages. How many customers do you need at that stage? And then at certain stages before that. And we'll talk about how to think about those stages and how to come up with these numbers. But this is really it. So I just want to point out it's very lightweight. And this is kind of what investors look at, and they like to see, investors and stakeholders and executives, they like to see this because they need to know, is this worth pursuing? And is it sane? Is it insane? Can we actually get 33,000 customers? So this is the high level meta metrics that these types of people want to see, so that they know that you've thought ahead to how many people you're going to need to actually get that number there, and that you've actually thought about that number. So that's the benefit of just laying this out. And so this is, again, stuff from last time, right? Speed of learning. We're trying to learn more. We're trying to outlearn the competition. It's the new unfair advantage. And here's the method that we talked about last time. Just like we're business model scientists, right? We model something, we prioritize the riskiest assumptions, we go test that, and then we go back and repeat until we have a solid business model. But that lean canvas that we talked about last time, it's not enough, right? Yes, it helps communicate your idea, but you can see the picture of the guy with the money bags on the right. He's saying, well, what should I expect from this, right? So oftentimes when people are posed that sort of question mark, how much are you going to make here? They immediately say, oh, well, I guess I got to do something like this, right? This drowning in this sea of numbers that are made up. You spend a lot of time doing them. Nobody reads them, including the investor. They're just looking for, 2 or 3 numbers in that whole deck, right? So this is a waste of time. It is unlean, and it doesn't actually help. Rather, we can use Fermi estimates. Fermi estimates are powers of 10, right? How many jelly beans are in there? That's a Fermi estimate. Well, I mean, that's not it, but you're using Fermi estimates. Is it 1? Is it 10? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? Choose one. That's a Fermi estimate, right? A power of 10. And that sort of guess is not about how accurate you are. It's about the assumptions you're using, that you're putting into it. So you look at it, you say, well, I guess there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess maybe I can see 9 across, and maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's 10, so maybe it's about 150, right? So it's about the input assumptions that you're making. And we're going to use something similar in what we're about to do. So there are kind of 7 key metrics to keep in mind, but in reality, there's actually not 7. You're going to see in a second. But the first one is probably the most important, and that's the minimum success criteria. It is the smallest outcome that would deem your project a success 3 years from now. Usually, but not always, usually this is expressed as annual recurring revenue. Okay. We're going to do a quick activity. So Miranda, I remember you had that kind of made up idea last time about the dog lift. All right.
Right.
Kathy, I don't think you were here last time, but do you have a business model? Do you have a business idea or a product idea in mind? Either something you want to build or something you're working on right now?
Super early. So I don't have even a canvas.
Perfect. It doesn't matter if it's on a canvas, if it's in your head, Miranda just came, she was just writing it on, I guess, on her phone last time. So choose a 3 years from today, choose a minimum success criteria for that product or business idea. I'm just going to give you a minute to think about it. Okay. I'm just going to put on my mute in 60 seconds. Then I'm going to come off mute. Then you're just going to tell me, what is the annual recurring revenue 3 years from now the minimum that would make that project a success. It could be a startup idea, or it could be something you're working on in your company. Okay, 60 seconds. Think about it. You know, 15 seconds. You can take a look at that hint at the bottom, by the way, if you'd like. All right, let's share. Miranda, I can see you, so you go first. What's the number in your head, and what's the business idea, by the way?
So I'm changing it to a completely different industry. I'm going to say brewery,
Sure.
1 million annual revenue. That's
Okay.
revenue, not profit, right?
Revenue, correct.
Okay.
Okay, 1 million ARR in 3 years. Okay, Kathy, how about you? Kathy, you there?
Sorry, I was muted. Are you hearing me now?
Yep.
I was thinking of like a platform for coaches, and I'm going to start kind of more like a numbers wise. So I was thinking 500,000.
All right, 500,000 annual recurring revenue. All right, good. So let's point out right now that neither of those numbers are juicy enough for really any sort of professional investor. So you're really thinking of both of those as sort of lifestyle businesses. And I just want to point that out because it's important, because a lot of people sometimes are like, well, you know, I'm going to start this thing that is going to need a ton of investment, you know, like robotics or something like that. Or I'm doing a reusable cups idea with somebody else. And if we set that minimum success criteria to something like $1 million in 3 years, but in the back of our minds, we know that we are going to need a big investment to grow it in order to make this successful, then that minimum success criteria is not big enough. And we need to think bigger. So if you ever do have an idea where you're thinking in your mind, like, I'm gonna need a big investment and it's gonna need to get big to grow, then set your minimum success criteria as $10 million annual recurring revenue, and then don't think about it. Just set it like that. Okay, there's your little rule of thumb. But those are fine. So those are kind of lifestyle businesses. That's great. All right. I didn't ask you why you chose them. I am actually kind of curious. Why did you choose $1 million, and why did you choose 500,000? Miranda, why did you choose $1 million? If no reason, no problem.
Just dreaming.
Sure. That sounds good. That sounds good. Kathy, similar?
I was thinking about the lifestyle bit. We could kind of support a handful of people doing it at sort of bootstrap phase.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So we have our minimum success criteria. The second metric, which is actually going to be multiple metrics, is traction. And what is traction? All of these things are a form of traction, although, as we talked about, revenue might not be the best indicator because it's a lagging indicator. But acquisition, people coming into your funnel. Activation, people doing their first activity in your customer factory. If it's a website, maybe they sign up, maybe they take some action. Retention, how often they come back, how many of those users are coming back the next week, the next month, however you measure this, right? Referral, how many people join as a referral of others? and then revenue. How many people actually sign up for a paid trial? All of those things that I just mentioned, any of those could be a traction metric. And it's your choice to choose which one of these is the one that I need to focus on at any given time. So all of them, acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral, the pirate metrics are, those are all traction metrics, okay?
Have you ever had a chance to do this presentation on Talk Like a Pirate Day?
Talk Like a Pirate Day. I don't even know what that is.
It's a day. It's one of those goofy holidays, but it's sometime in September. There is a Talk Like a Pirate Day.
I will look out for a business conference happening on that day, and if I can, I'll sneak in. But yeah, pirate metrics. Sorry, I do like the simplicity of them. So we have this transition from a whole bunch of people that are just unaware visitors, and then something happens to them and they become happy paying customers. And the output of all of this, we're setting our output minimum goal as $10 million annual recurring revenue in this example. But the question is, well, how many of those unaware visitors do we need to turn into happy customers to get that output, right? And so now we're talking traction. So let's take this model as an example. $50 a month, right? That's your pricing model. Imagine the lean canvas, the lower right of it's revenue, $50 a month, whatever the heck the product is, $50 a month, all right? Let's think about this. Well, how many actual paying customers do we need at $50 a month to have $10 million in a year? You say, well, my yearly revenue target divided by yearly customer revenue, that's 16,000 customers at any given moment, right? That we need to be making $10 million. The problem is, though, that we need to be constantly creating new users. Right? We can't just say, oh, we need 16,000 and we just go to that and then we're done, right? Because it doesn't account for how many people are leaving, right? Attrition, churn. So this is a better way to think about the customer production rate, right? How many annual new customers do we need to create every single year in order to be at that $10 million annual recurring revenue consistently? To do that, it's a very simple calculation. Yearly revenue target, $10 million, divided by the customer lifetime value. So now we need to think about lifetime. So if we're telling ourselves, in this example, clearly we're telling ourselves the lifetime is 24 months, okay? You could modify it for whatever business model you have in mind. But now we're saying to ourselves, okay, our annual customer production rate, we need to be creating 8,000 new customers each year to make this business model work based on our minimum success criteria, right? And clearly this business model is some sort of model that's made and requires a big investment from an investor at some point. For your business models that you might have in mind, it'll be smaller, the number of new customers that you need every single year. But now that you have this number, now that you have it, right? Although I guess I'll wait a second until I get there. This just kind of visualizes that, as soon as you get to 16,000, if it's a 2-year lifetime, 24 months, that means every single year, 8,000 are leaving and you need to add 8,000 more. And that's why that math works. But this is our first dose of reality, right? We need 8,000 new customers every single year. And so if you think about it, those are just customers. If this is some sort of SaaS product, and it's not necessarily SaaS what you're thinking of, but SaaS has a 1% paid conversion rate. So for every one customer, we need 100 visitors. So we need 800,000 new visitors every year. That's 2,000 new visitors, unique new visitors every day. So really, we need to stop ourselves and think, wait a minute, is this possible? And that's one of the benefits, that's the first benefit of the traction roadmap, is just the dose of reality, the sanity check. Is this possible, right? Go out, grab some market numbers, say, well, The market is only 1 million people. If we need 800,000 new visitors every single year, we need the majority of the market to come to us every single year, but we need new people beyond that. So that wouldn't work for this model, for this business model, if the market size was really only 1 million people. So now, next activity. Think about it. Just do some, grab a piece of paper, use your head if you want, but think about, based on the minimum success criteria that you told me. So for Miranda, you said 1 million annual recurring revenue. And Kathy, you said 500,000 annual recurring revenue. How many customers do you need to create? And I put a little hint here, use the formula. I'm going to go back to that formula just so we're looking at it. Okay. This obviously requires you to think, well, what's the customer lifetime value of one of my customers? Ballpark it for now. So I'll give you a couple minutes here just to kind of think through this. 2 minutes specifically. It's been a minute. If you need another minute, tell me. Okay, well, let's just go over these. Sorry, I'm stopping you a little short. Kathy, let's start with you first. So there's 3 numbers that we're looking at in this equation, right? The customer production rate equals, for Kathy, it's $500,000 divided by some number. So Kathy, what is the customer lifetime value for you with this business model, which is a platform for coaches?
Yeah, I went with $300.
Okay.
That means 1,700 is that total.
1,700. All right, sanity check it for me out loud. I don't know what exactly, I don't know who your customer segment is. Maybe you could just describe that for me. Like, just you're thinking of it in your head. That's okay. Who is this customer segment in your mind?
Well, if I did, for the nation, then I still think that that's doable.
Okay.
It would mean that I couldn't just charge coaches. I'd have to charge clients of the coaches.
Sounds good. As long as you're saying that it's doable, that's really the goal of this quick little exercise. Miranda, how about you? So what's the customer lifetime value for this brewery customer of yours?
I assumed that the average regular would bring in $25 a month, but they would probably only last about 24 months before they got distracted on something else. So
Okay.
that gave me 600. And because I'm tired, I'm triple checking my math. So 1 million divided by 600 is 1,700. I mean, it's 1,6666666666666. So
Gotcha.
I rounded up to 1,700.
Yeah, you both have the same numbers. Kathy's 500,000 divided by 300. You're 1 million divided by 600. So you're both looking at 1,700 and that number is 1,700 new customers every year, right? So Miranda, how sane does this sound to you? Based on whatever customer segment you're thinking of. And by the way, are you thinking about something here in Denver?
Yep.
So do you think whatever market you're in, and I'm not sure what market or neighborhood or whatever, does that sound like a doable, viable number?
Nope.
I actually don't know. By the way, I'm asking you that. I'm not asking you as if like, I don't think so. It's like, I literally don't know. And I'm asking what you think.
For location, nope.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, but that's fine. And that's the purpose of doing this traction roadmap right now, is to ask yourself, wait a minute, hold on, like I need to check some numbers here. So, whoops, I think I might have gone down. So the first dose of reality, did I go back? Sorry about this. Yeah, I got a little bit lost. Okay, there we go. So we're sanity checking this. We're asking ourselves, like, is this lean canvas that I just laid out, is this even worth it? Can I do this thing? And you're really looking at that customer segment, and you're asking yourself, the customer segment that I have in mind, can I get 1,700 new of them every single year? And it sounds like Kathy is saying, yeah, potentially. And it sounds like maybe an online model is what you're thinking, Kathy. Whereas Miranda, you're saying, well, this is a local business in a specific neighborhood that you're thinking of, and it might not work there. But let's think about it for a second. If it doesn't seem possible, there's only two things that you can do to see if it can be possible. One is lower your goal, obviously, right? If you say, well, actually, I only need to make $250,000 in revenue. Okay, that's one way to fourth your to make it much more viable. The other way is the bottom of that equation, right? To increase the customer lifetime value. And that means either increasing the length of the value that you're providing them. And that honestly, that might be something that you'll think of, Miranda, and say, well, I don't know, I'll do some really cool brewery and they're going to stick around for 4 years, right? They're going to be there for twice as long. Or you say, I'm going to raise the pricing, or I'm going to raise my expectation of how much they're going to pay me every single month. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of promotion. And it's not $600 lifetime value. It's $2,000 lifetime value, right? So you do
Or
like this.
just move the location.
Sure. And that's kind of doing the same thing perhaps. But I see what you mean. But then making it viable by having it somewhere else. But either way, this is just kind of a quick thought exercise for how to, sanity check a business model and think about pricing and customer segments quickly. So really the question is, can you double your pricing without losing more than half your customers? If the answer is yes, then if purely based on traction and revenue, then you should do it. Because having the added benefit there is that having fewer customers to care for lowers the time and support costs that you have to give as well. All right, so let's go back to this. And so I took that previous example, which was $50 a month. And that seemed like a lot. I can't even remember what the business model was, to be honest, but 800,000 people new every single year. It seemed like way too much. So instead of $50 a month, I said, let's quadruple that. Let's say it's $200 a month. And now the lifetime value of these people obviously quadruples, right? And so now if we go through that math again, instead of needing 8,000 new customers every year, now we just need 2,000 new customers every year. And now this is seeming, well, and now I only need 200,000 new visitors. And this is a SaaS product in a certain market. I do remember that. This is seeming more doable, right? And that's the purpose of doing this exercise at the beginning, to make it seem more viable, more feasible, more doable. So now the question is, well, okay, is it just fuzzy math? Are we just thinking about kind of end numbers? I hope that you saw some of the benefit of doing this traction roadmap simply for the purpose of sanity checking it. But now we're actually going to use it for its second purpose, which is setting realistic goals early on and throughout the entire growth process of this product. So as I mentioned, and we're using that example that I was just kind of going through. If we need, you can see the desired throughput. Throughput in this case, we're talking about the output, right? 4,000 active customers. If we need 4,000 active customers at any given time, just to make $10 million a year annually, that means 2,000 leave every year. It's a 2-year lifetime. So we need to add 2,000 every year. 2,000 leave, 2,000 add. So the question is, okay, well, how the heck do we get there, right? Like, why is this just fuzzy math? What's the purpose of this traction roadmap? And we need to adopt the mindset of stages, right? Stages of growth. The first stage you can think of is problem solution fit. The second stage, product market fits. Maybe you've heard these before. If not, don't worry about it. We can talk about it more later. And then the third stage is scale, right? Growing big. We know that at the end of that third stage, we're going to have 4,000 active customers constantly, right? 2,000 in every single year we need to create. But these previous stages, what do we need? What do we need to actually show that we're on the right path towards the big goal? And to do that, we can start getting a little bit more visual. So those are the 3 stages mapped out. And the question now is, how do you actually model that graph? It's very simple. We saw it at the beginning. I'm not about to show you anything you haven't seen before, but really a traction roadmap it shows your significant milestone markers, and it helps investors, stakeholders, bosses, executives, it helps them see what your next goal is. Not just what the end goal is, what's your next goal? All right, we just said the same thing. So you could kind of think about it in 2 ways. It's either linear or kind of exponential here, right? But you're not going from 0 to 4,000 in a straight line, right? Startup growth, or even any new product growth, not just startups, it's non-linear, right? You need to decelerate at the beginning, not accelerate. You need to learn the things that are going to help you reach the next level of growth. So in this first little bit called problem solution fit, that's the time when we're really just, I guess I'll go back. This is the time when we're really just tons of learning. We don't know if this idea is any good. We don't know if we should even build this thing. We're just trying to learn from people. Do they like the offer, the value proposition? In this second stage, product market fit, this is generally when we start building something. After we've validated that there's desirability for it, then we start building it, offering it, doing tests, and then finally scale when we actually start implementing growth strategies and growth hacking, for example. And then obviously it continues beyond this. So this last metric that we want to talk about is, well, what is the rate of growth on that graph? If it's not linear, if it's not just 1, well, then what is the rate and what should we think about? And here is one of the mindsets of continuous innovation that I'd like to instill upon you, is the 10x growth mindset. It's kind of further down the list on the mindsets, but I'm showing it to you anyways. We're kind of skipping ahead to it because it's important regarding traction modeling here. We want to think 10x. We want to think big. And the 10x on the side refers to the difference between each of these stages. So, well, actually, I'll show you the example in a second, but I don't want you to think of 10x as just some sort of fuzzy number that only startups like Facebook and Instagram and digital companies that are viral use. Yes, they have massive growth, but we can use this mindset to help us grow in stages and learn at each stage what's necessary for the next. After all, we all start with 1 customer. Of course, those companies I just mentioned, they also started with 1 customer. How do you get 10x? Just 1 10x? Well, we double it. How many times do we double it? Well, if you think about it, if you double 3 times, that's basically 10xing, right? If you start with 1 customer and you double 3 times, you get to 8. That's close enough, right? We're Fermi estimating here. right? So if each one of those stages is 10x, you just need to think of yourself, well, in each one of these stages, how do I double 3 times? If you think to yourself, well, I'd rather have a kind of lower growth rate, 5x, 4x, 3x. I don't want to get into this mindset of boom, like hyper growth. But actually, that is harder. If you're thinking in terms of, well, I'm going to kind of double every year. In order to reach your goal, I mean, yes, that means that later on it's going to be easier to reach, but earlier on it's much more difficult. If you're trying to do much more than you actually can early on, you're not giving yourself permission to scale. And so you can see 5x in the beginning, you need 167 customers. Whereas if you're thinking 10x, you only need 42 customers. And I'm going to show you kind of how this maps out. Sorry, I think I might have skipped ahead a little bit, but this slide.
Is this because you don't have the money to do what you need to do?
It's because the early stages of growth, you are going to learn the insights that help you make tweaks and pivots to your business model to get to the next level of growth, right? Like growth doesn't happen like this. Of course, growth happens like this, and then it stops, and then it jumps, and then it kind of goes around, then it stops, then it jumps. And those jumps occur when we learn something new, right? When we realize and gain insights from doing things that don't scale early on. So that's kind of the 10x mindset is, well, we need to go slow early, and we're going to learn something, and we're going to jump up 10x. And then we're going to kind of learn something again, and we're going to jump up 10x. But it also helps the mindset of, well, in the early stage, we're not trying to go too fast early on. We're trying to find 42 customers. That's it. We're not trying to find 200 customers, right? We're not trying to find 1,000, we're trying to find 42. And that mindset and giving yourself permission, I know we didn't look at all 10 mindsets earlier. We kind of skipped around to some of them. One of the mindsets is give yourself permission to scale, right? These early stages are where the valuable insights are going to come from. And going too fast, doing growth marketing too early before you've actually found a repeatable business model, that's jumping the gun. That's going to a higher growth stage where you're not actually ready for it. So to answer your question, it's not necessarily about cost. It's about learning, right? How much learning have you done? So anyways, I do want to point out the 10x and how that works here. For this business model, I think this was one of the early examples I gave where it says $10 million annual recurring revenue at $50 a month for 24-month lifetime. They're going to need 4,167 customers every single year new customers every single year in order to reach that $10 million ARR goal. Now, just divide that by 10. That's your next stage. And divide that by 10. That's your next stage again. And divide that by 10. So instead of 42 customers, you could divide that by 10, and that's another stage you're going for. So you're going for 4 customers, right? And that's honestly the simplicity of these mindsets. And it really helps you focus on your early stage learnings instead of jumping ahead too early and saying, oh my God, we got to get a whole bunch of customers. It's like, no, I need to get 4 customers. And as soon as I get 4 customers, I say, well, what do I need to do to get 42 customers? So this 10x mindset is all about giving yourself permission to scale and learning what you need to. Go ahead. I thought maybe I heard something. If you have a question or comment, there's only 3 of us here, so feel free to jump on in. I'll keep going otherwise. All right. So in the early days, when you don't actually have a product, you might be wondering, well, how do I get a customer? And, I got this idea, like, how do I get a customer? I don't have a product. Well, we can actually, think about, well, how do you, in this example, there's 42 customers, right? So how do you convert 42 customers per year? And it's always per year, by the way. This is production rate, right? This is annual recurring customer creation. How do you convert 42 customers a year to something more measurable when you don't actually have something to sell? Well, let's use some math, right? The paid conversion rate of a SaaS product, that's this business model, but you could think of your own paid conversion rate. from leads to trials to customers. There's usually a 10% conversion rate between those three. So 100 leads, 10% is 10, 10 trials, 10% is one, that's one paying customer. So if you're trying to get 42 customers, well, then you need 420 trials and you need 4,200 leads. So, and by the way, this math is wrong, so excuse me, it should be 350 leads a month, not 466. But you take those number of leads that you need and you say, well, if I need 4,200 leads a year to get my first goal, I guess I need 466 leads per month. And I could similarly do the same thing with the trials. So if I need 420 trials per year, if I divide that by 12, it should actually be 35, but whatever, 47 trials per month, right? So that now becomes a goal that you can use in your early stage business model testing, right? You don't say, I need 42 customers per year. Now you say, well, it's in the next 3 months, I'm going to try to get 47 trials per month, right? So and you could even go 10x that. I'm going to get 4 trials per month, right? So it gives you permission to scale on the trajectory towards your overall goal in 3 years. So 47 trials a month, if that's your goal, you can put it in on the traction roadmap as your very first 3-month goal. And you can show this to advisors. You can show this to stakeholders. You can say, this is our output goal. This is our traction roadmap, not our product roadmap, which is going to change anyways, right? Our traction roadmap shows where we're going. And you could separate this out. And, you know, I use terms like problem, solution fit, product market fit, scale. You could just say now, next, later, right? It can be as simple as that. And this is the final slide. This is just a picture of, this is the guy who created the continuous innovation methodology. And this is just a screenshot of his first goal for his business. It was a SaaS product. And he laid it out. You can see on the left side, in the upper left is this goals box. And he had 3 goals. He said, well, I want to start 47 trials. He didn't have a working website. He just had kind of a landing page, and he would do interviews with people that came to the landing page. And if they, at the end of the interviews, he would say, do you want to sign up for this trial? And that was the test. If they said yes, he counted it +1. If they said no, he asked why and learned, right? He would learn these insights early on about why aren't they accepting it, or why are they as well. It's good to know why on both sides. So you could see his three goals early on were start 47 trials, make sure that they're accepting this trial, knowing that it's $200 in pricing per month, and that I'm getting 80% of people who I talk to accept the trial. That's one of those kind of tips and tricks early on in a business model when you're doing testing with people. If you test, if you have an idea like a lean canvas, for example, Miranda, your doggy lift for the stairs, if you draw some really high quality prototype images of it, not prototype, I'm sorry, designs of it, and you show it to people and you say, would you want this at this price point? Sign up here to get an early discount when I build it. And you talk to 100 people that are in your specific customer segment. And you say, well, they need to be dog owners. And specifically, the dogs need to be old. They need to have 2-story or 3-story houses. And they need to be big dogs that are difficult to carry. And if you interview even 20 people that fit that criteria, and only 1 or 2 of them says yes and signs up for that early discount when you build it, well, that's obviously not 80%, right? That's 5% or 10. And that tells you, that gives you an indication that I'm not getting my value proposition right, or maybe I'm not getting my pricing right, or maybe they just don't have this pain like I thought they did, right? So that's how this, and so that 80% is just I'm just giving you a little tip and trick for doing early stage validation work. You want to get your early stage validation up to, you know, a high number of people that you're interviewing, accepting your offer, your test, before you move on to actually building anything. So sorry, a little tangent there. So that's it. And here is the final activity. Oh, it says 30 minutes, but it actually won't take that long. Sorry, I can probably get through that. So for your chosen idea, and so Miranda, brewery, and Kathy, your platform for coaches, you chose your minimum success criteria. I want you to take 5 minutes here and literally, this is, you could honestly do this, draw a graph, right? Draw a big hockey stick going up to the right. I guess you can't see this, it's too small. Draw a hockey stick going up to the right and have 3 points on it. Year 1, year 2, year 3. And I want you to calculate how many customers you need at each of those 3 stages, right? So we already figured out how many customers you need for that last stage, right? I think it was 1,700. So how many do you need at year 2? How many do you need at year 1? And how many do you need at month 3, which is kind of the 4th stage? Actually, I'm not going to give you 5 minutes. This shouldn't take you too long because I'm giving you a hint. So I'll give you, I don't know, I'll give you a couple minutes here, then we'll come off mute and we'll talk about it. Any questions on what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the 1,700 was new customers per year. Is it the same? Because his other numbers were total customers active, right?
Yep, you
So I
got
was
it
just
right. So
wondering-
you already have your year 3 customer creation rate that you need, 1,700 new customers per year in order to reach your minimum success criteria. So now I'm probably making this seem too complicated because I'm giving you too much time. This is a very simple thing. Yeah. Go, hey, Kathy, if you already know it, go ahead, tell me. What would you need in year 2, year 1, and also month 3? Thinking about it? Well, Kathy or Miranda, I'll let you kind of come off mute and just tell me what you think your numbers would be for this traction roadmap.
So I had to do some rounding and I said 2 per month in that first one because it would 2 new customers per.
Start with the end goal. So what's the
There we
end goal?
Hold on,
Remind
I
me of
said
the
that
end
out
goal.
loud and now I'm second guessing myself. So like, okay, so it was 1,700
Yep.
new customers by the end of year 3 on an annual rate.
Yep.
By the end of year 2, if we use the 10x rule, we would need 170,
Yep.
which means by the end of year 1, we would need to be hitting 17.
Yep.
Well, okay, so 17, if you then do use the 10x rule again to get to a, no, wait, that's where
Yeah.
that's where I messed up. I didn't divide that right. So then it would be 17 divided by 12.
No, it's, oh, don't worry about the, 12. It's not a full year. It's only 3. Don't worry about that. It just 10x it again, right? So basically 1.7 or 2, right?
1.7, which you can't have 1.7 people.
Right.
So it would be 2.
So for your business model, which is a brewery, I think it probably, I mean, obviously you're not going to open a brewery and aim for 2 customers. You can probably just get rid of that early goal and just say, well, 17 is the first goal, right? 17, and this would be, and these are annual new customers. So you could even, I mean, honestly, you could start larger than 17. You might, usually this 10x rule is often for digital products. So a brewery,
The numbers I was using was assuming a regular customer. So who visits at least once a month. So it would be specifically identifying 17 regular customers who maybe sign up to a mug club kind of deal, not customers in general, but regulars.
Sure. And that is what I'm thinking as well. The 17 represent customers. We don't need to think about them as monthly customers. They are customers and they have a certain lifetime. So these 17, as soon as they enter your brewery for the first time, they have 2 years and then they're going to leave, right? So they could be coming every week, every day. I don't really know, but they have a lifetime, right? A 2-year lifetime in the traction model mind. So you could say to yourself, well, I'm going to go for 17 customers and they're going to last 2 years. I don't know how often they'll come in. I think you already thought about it a little bit. You predicted that you would get $25 in revenue from each of them every month. I personally think you might get more from them. You might want to double that, even if not triple or quadruple it. Maybe not quadruple, I don't know, but increase that just to kind of make it a little bit more realistic, in my opinion. But yes, you're thinking about this in the correct way. So, and this is kind of the staged based way of thinking about customer growth. So yeah, starting with 17 as your first goal makes a lot of sense. But with this business model, with a brewery, you probably want to start by simply going to the neighborhood, and instead of actually renting a building and starting a brewery, you want to just go to the neighborhood with a survey and saying, hey, I'm thinking about building a brewery here, or asking people, what breweries do you use in the neighborhood? Figuring out if there is a dearth or a lack of breweries, and if they have a problem with their current breweries that are in the neighborhood. And then ending the conversation with saying, well, hey, I'm thinking about starting one. If you'd like to be on the list to be notified when I open, leave your email address here. People don't like to leave their email addresses. That's why it's a good test, right? And if you can get 17 people to sign that, I think you've already met that first goal, right? So it obviously doesn't mean that they're definitely going to come, but it's a very good indicator. So there are different ways to reach traction. And as I mentioned, traction can be anything you want. You don't have to necessarily say, well, I need 17 paying customers. You could say, well, if I'm thinking that 100 people signing this list equals or will equal in the future 17 paying customers, and you can kind of tell yourself that story, and you can make the connection between those and say, well, 1 in 5, or 1 in 5 of these people that sign this will actually come. Then that's your first goal, right? 100 people to sign this thing that you have in that neighborhood. So that's kind of a good way to test it, in my opinion. Let's see. Kathy, how about yourself? What were your numbers?
Well, I guess I'm still a little bit was thinking about that, hey, this is actually going to probably be high churn at first. And so even though we did it as a rate, I thought, the first number included how much I think I could get out of a customer. If I actually really high churn, then I multiplied by 3, saying, well, I actually have to have all of new customers every year.
Yeah.
At that, early stages. So that's why I came up with 54, for the first, and then 540 for this, and then 5,000.
Yeah, 50, 500, 5,000. Well, if you had 5,000 customers,
Yeah.
and if they were, that essentially triples your minimum success criteria if they are indeed, if they do have a lifetime value of $300, which I think it seems like, based on your business model, that you could make more from a single customer over the course of their lifetime than just $300. And don't think that this is an average lifetime value based on 100 potential visitors that come in, and if only one pays, then it averages out to no. It's for a paying customer, for the paying customers that you have, what's the average that they will all pay? And for your model of like an online platform for coaches, if they are actually paying customers, I would imagine that you could make much more from them than just that. Although I have no idea what you're actually thinking of offering them, so I'm not sure. But it does seem like a little bit low on the lifetime value side for your general business model, I guess. We're 3 minutes out from the end, so I know we haven't kind of gone in detail on any of those business models, but I didn't really intend to. I was kind of hoping to just give you an overview of really what this traction roadmap is. Do you have any questions here in the last few minutes? Any questions about it that you wanted to review or to get clarification on? I'll give you a second to think. Questions can sometimes float
Hey, James, will you say it again? 'Cause I froze that whole time.
Sure. I was just saying, Kathy, if you have any questions, now's the time.
Can you move the
Okay.
slide to like one of the main traction?
Like that.
Yeah, just so that I can stare at it and absorb.
Sure. This is essentially, this is the traction roadmap. Okay,
Perfect. Thank you.
right here. I honestly, I hand draw these frequently. When people have business ideas, business models that they want to explore, this, after I have them create the lean canvas, this is the next thing, the immediate next thing that we do. Because yes, desirability is very important to test early on, and you need to go test your general value proposition from the lean canvas. You need to go test that with people, but viability is just as important. And putting off the thinking on viability until you actually build it and you start seeing people come in and start, getting paying customers, and then you start thinking, oh goodness, like how many of these paying customers do I need? What is my pricing right? And so you don't want to put that stuff off. You can sit down, sketch out one of these very simple graphs and put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on it, and front load all of that thinking, right? So we just did some quick thinking on, hypothetical business models ourselves in this session, and that already kind of helped sanity check. Oh, well, maybe it's not going to, maybe the market's not big enough to support this minimum success goal that I have. Or maybe, my pricing's too low, I need to double it. Or my pricing's still too low, I need to double it again. Right. So this simple lightweight traction roadmap really helps take a lot of the risk out of business, out of building a business and learning later that your pricing wasn't right or the market's not big enough. And it also helps stakeholders, investors see your goal and help sanity check it for you. So that's the benefit here. Next week, we're going to talk about lean sprints, the lean sprint process, because now that we talked about the lean canvas, we talk about the traction roadmap. These are models, right? And the purpose of a model, in the way that continuous innovation works is, yes, we start with a model. The lean canvas and the traction roadmap together are a model. Okay, they're both very lightweight, but they're both just models, and combine them. One shows the business model story, the other shows the traction story. They're models. We need to prioritize, well, what's riskiest, and test that. And so next week, we're going to talk about how do you test? How does that actually look? What is it? What do you do during these sprints to actually go out and experiment? So that's next week. It's called Lean Sprints. And then after that, well, I'm going to kind of pause. I'm going to reach out, maybe see how both of you are feeling about it. See what else you'd like to learn in the toolkit of continuous innovation, and kind of create a curriculum from there. So hope that sounds good. Hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed talking about it. If you can't tell, I just can go on sometimes. I'll nerd out on this stuff sometimes though, so I appreciate it. All right. Have a great night, and I will see you next week.
You too.
All right. Cheers.
Yeah. Bye.